Now, here's your host, Lady Fuller.
Welcome, everyone, to Habits for Happiness, the show where we discuss habits in your daily life that can make you too happier. Today, we welcome the amazing John Purkiss. He's the best-selling author of The Power of Letting Go, and he's going to talk to us today about the habit of completion and his completion technique, as he describes in his beautiful work. Please listen with us to how you too can learn to let go and live a life that's more present, peaceful, and calm, and live what I love so much that John talks about in his work, in the flow. So, John, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor for me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yes. And let me just introduce you because you have a beautiful bio. At least I'll start it off and I'll let you tell the rest of your awesome story. But John grew up in England and he studied economics at Cambridge. He went on to receive an MBA and receive the Henry Ford II Prize. And later, he was very successful, of course, having all these accolades. But after being diagnosed with depression, he realized he did not know how to live a successful and fulfilling life. This may resonate with many of you listeners. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story because I want John to tell us what happened from that point onward, what led him here to be a best-selling author and be with us here today. So, John, if you want to tell us sort of start off with your journey. You went on to study finance and be super successful and found yourself at this sort of crucible moment. What happened then that brought you here to your successful self today?
So what happened was I grew up with the unspoken assumption that if you're intelligent and hardworking, you're going to have a happy and successful life. I mean, I don't recall anyone saying that explicitly, but that was
Yes.
That was the deal. And I was surrounded by children who were kind of on that track. And I went to a free school, but it was very academic. And lots of us went to Oxford and Cambridge. And, you know, the idea is it's all going to be fine. I worked in banking and management consulting. I went to INSEAD, so business school, and that worked brilliantly. But the underlying problem was that I was perfectly qualified to be either an investment banker or a management consultant. And having worked in both occupations, I knew I didn't want to do either of them. I mean, I enjoyed the work, but I just thought these are intelligent people working in a not very intelligent way because they were making themselves ill. Just overwork, presenteeism, all that stuff. Like there are intelligent ways to get work done efficiently, and they weren't doing it. So I thought, well, I don't want to work in that culture. And I decided eventually I would either like to be a fund manager, so manage investments, or be a headhunter and recruit people. Don't know either of those. Anyway, and so, but then what I realized, and this is how I got diagnosed with clinical depression, is I realized that you need a lot of intuition to invest money or recruit people. And I Mr. Super Analytical, and my intuition seemed to have stopped. I've seen this in other people. I have friends actually who are still like this. You can be so analytical that your intuition doesn't function. And I'm defining intuition as immediate insight without reasoning, which is I don't know if you remember the Microsoft Encarta World English Dictionary. That's the best definition I've seen, which is you have an insight and it came out of the blue. It doesn't come from a thought process.
Yeah.
And my understanding is, you know, the best scientists, mathematicians, that's how they operate. It comes out.
Totally. I mean, Einstein, you know, it was like, it was just downloads, you know, from a source, right?
Yeah, exactly. And anyone who meditates, listening to this, may have experienced this. I mean, I meditate at least twice a day, and I get downloads during the meditation. When the point is, when the thinking stops, the downloads come, right? But when I was 26, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was all about thinking. And anyway, so I was diagnosed with clinical depression because I realized, well, I'm perfectly qualified to do A or B. What I really want to do is C or D, and I don't have the intuition necessary to do that, so I'm stuck, aren't I? Right? And then I started waking up early and having suicidal thoughts, and 3 doctors and psychiatrists said, you have clinical depression, please have some very strong pills, and if those don't work, you can have electroshock therapy.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, actually, no, to be fair, they sent me off to see I mean, it was almost comical. They sent me off to see, as you may know, Sigmund Freud spent the last years of his life in North London, and some of his followers, well, certainly there are people in North London still doing that. And so I went off to see this man with the white beard, and I lay on the couch and all of that. And what happened was we analyzed all the problems, and we didn't solve any of them. Right. So we identified the problem. Here are all the problems. Fine. No solution. Right. So if I fast forward quite a long time, two things happened. One was I got completely stuck. I was running my own business in Paris, and I got completely stuck because there were all these strikes and the economy ground to a halt. And this may sound like an American self-help book, but I had no money. My relationship was ending. I was slightly depressed. I had sciatica, and I couldn't pay the rent. So basically, one of those.
Yes, the full Monty here.
Full
Yes,
Monty
everything happening.
Self-help disaster scenario. So basically, my life. So I had all these marvelous qualifications, and and I was running meetings in French and everything, and the result was a complete disaster. So, being a bit of a social scientist, I kind of thought, well, on the one hand, this is really depressing. On the other hand, it's quite interesting because I appear to have done everything perfectly according to my upbringing. And the results are not what I want. They're complete zero.
Yes.
So I kind of got to the point of knowing that I didn't know. And the big breakthrough, actually, I was reading an American self-help book called A Rich Man's Secret, right? So it sounded good. Like, it's about how to make some money. Good. So I was reading this book, and it's one of these novels which is kind of fabricated to make a point. And in this novel, he talks about the protagonist meets this man who says, now knows, return to now. So it's all about return to now.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there in Paris. I gave up working because working wasn't achieving anything. And I just experimented with returning to now. So every time my attention wandered, I would return to now. And then so I started doing this. And then I thought, well, okay, so maybe I should just let go, because none of my efforts are translating into results. So I'll just let go. And then the third thing, having gone to church for 10 years, I had at least absorbed that there was something more intelligent than my brain going on. So the third thing I did was, so it was be present, I return to now, let go, and ask to be guided. And I asked to be guided. And a few days later, an advert appeared in the newspaper. And 6 months later, I was in the perfect job. And what was interesting about it was I was earning exactly the amount of money I'd been trying and failing to earn for 7 years. And it all happened as soon as I let go, as soon as I gave up all the struggle and effort. I mean, I'm still working hard on this job, but I wasn't fighting. I was just being present. And the other thing about being present is my intuition suddenly switched on. Like, when I stopped analyzing everything, I found, I can now observe my thoughts, but I can also read other people's thoughts. So this job was with one of the 5 big executive search firms. And the really spooky part was, I won't go into detail, the really spooky part was after I got the job, I found this memo from human resource, from the chairman, right?
Right.
And it said, we're going to recruit someone just below partner, and the perfect candidate would have the following 5 or 6 attributes. I was a perfect fit. I had all, can't remember, 5 or 6, I had all of them. It was a bullseye. And what it showed me was, okay, so when I stopped all the analyzing and hard work, the cosmos moved me from disaster A to perfect job B, right, with no friction. So for me, that was a major, and people might say, well, that was just one incident. Yes, but it was life-changing, and I've done it repeatedly then, right? Yes. So moral of story, in the West, we've been conditioned to believe that we're body minds trying to get what we want and avoid what we don't. And my experience is it doesn't work, or it only works up to a point. If you really want to make things happen, you have to tune in to the intelligence which is running the cosmos. And then think, they happen and often on a bigger scale than you expected, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's this concept, and it's been coming up in my work a lot lately, is, I coach. And so people will come to me usually with a limiting behavior, which is usually coupled with some limiting beliefs. And as we learn to let go of those things that don't serve us, it's like you create all this space in your body or in your energy field for all the things that are waiting for you that
Yes.
you aren't forcing to find you. It's like you don't have space for both. So
Yes.
it's in this like letting go that we let in. It's this
Exactly.
really reciprocal arrangement. And it's amazing. I have one client specifically who's experiencing what you described. She actually let go of drinking, and in her place has come this amazing, these old friendships that have begun resolved, that weren't resolved, someone at work who was toxic left, and all of these things. And she keeps saying, and I keep saying, she's like, what's happening? And I keep saying, you're in the flow. This is it. This is the pinnacle moment. It's true. It works like that.
Yeah, it does work like that. I think the challenge, I'm just reading, because I'm working on a new book, and I've just been reading The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, if you know that book.
I don't, but I'll look into it. That sounds amazing.
But it's worth, for people listening, it's worth looking at how things have changed, because that experience I've just described was in 1996. And The Power of Letting Go, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was
yes.
the next year.
Oh, it was.
And when I learned to be present, I didn't know what I was doing, but I discovered later on, oh, that's called mindfulness.
Yes.
And it's interesting because Eckhart Tolle doesn't use the word mindfulness. He says it's a misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so in 1997, which is 25 years ago, so The Power of Now was published, but also The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And what's interesting to me is how much things have moved on since then. I mean, they're both really successful books, but what you're saying about, so Swamiji, the guru that I followed,
Love him.
Nityananda,
yes.
He talks about inner space, your inner space. And at first I never understood what he meant by inner space, but it's actually very simple. Is we have an inner space, and if it's empty, and we're really, which most people, it's not empty, but imagine it's empty, and you hold this thing in your inner space that you want to manifest, right? It manifests, right? Equally, if you hold in your inner space something that you don't want, that manifests. It's both. But the tricky part for most people is, well, practically everybody, is we have these pain patterns which are constantly generating negative thoughts. And nearly everybody is running around having experiences that they don't want because of all this rubbish which is in their inner space.
Well, that's why I think it's really important to be clear on what we do want, because most of us are very, very clear on what we don't want. But you ask someone what they do want, and most people can't answer right away.
I have that. I mean, I have calls with people who, so I still recruit chief executives, chief financial officers, whatever. And frequently I say, well, what do you want to do next? And they start talking about what they've done in the past or what their limitations are. And I just say, okay, in an ideal world, what would you want to do? Dropping all of the, and then finally, we get to what they want.
Yes. It's rising to the surface and getting rid of all the other rubbish, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and I think that's true for most people. And my experience so the school that I went to, as I said, it sent lots of children to Oxford and Cambridge, but there were also some suicides. That's that crowd. And as far as I can see, what happens, I grew up in an environment where some people either were mentally ill or became mentally ill. And I manifested that, right? Like I was in an environment where that was a possibility.
Yeah. So tell us more. So you're in an environment where that's a possibility for you or for others, or when you say you manifested it?
On the basis that we are all one consciousness.
Yeah, we are.
So the people I grew up with, I mean, in that era, quite a lot of my friends were Jewish because, as you may know, a lot of Jewish people escaped from Nazi Germany in the 30s. So their children, some, now it's children, now it's grandchildren, but, their children and grandchildren are growing up in England, and, they had parents who basically, the grandparents had been killed and their parents had a narrow escape. And they tended to be academically very talented, but also there's this backdrop of trauma and illness. In fact, someone I was at school with published a book called Mending the Mind. I mean, I don't agree with the approach at all, but we were at school together, and he wrote this book called Mending the Mind. And, he went to Oxford and then got clinical depression. Story. So, it's kind of correlated. I think what it is, the underlying theme is trying to solve everything by thinking. So you grow up in an environment that's very academic, where it's all about thought. And then when you hit a problem, you try and solve it through thinking. And when you can't solve it through thinking, you become suicidal because the whole thing is so painful. Well, how do I stop the pain? Well, one option is to kill myself. And I haven't been given any other options.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is what I call neck up living, right? And our work is neck up living, isn't that? Yeah. And I think that, you know, I ascribe to the belief that we should be really neck down living.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yes. For the heart. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's this idea of like, our body always knows before our brain does. Our heart always knows before our brain does, but we've shut off the ability to hear those parts of ourselves.
Well, definitely. I mean, what seems to happen is, as children, we're intuitive. And then when we go through formal education, most formal education will knock the intuition out of you, right?
Yes, it will. If you ever knew it was there, it's certainly.
Well, you didn't know it was there, right? But and then
yes, especially when you get an advanced degree and it's gone. This is straight out of the window.
yeah, any kind of And it's interesting because I mean, I still have lots of friends from Cambridge or business school, and some of them actually regard intuition as fuzzy thinking. And I said, it's not fuzzy thinking, it's not thinking.
And it's the clearest version of.
And that's when that's when the real insights come. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about this completion technique. I've read about it and I know about it, but for listeners.
The first thing is it's not mine. I mean,
okay.
It's not mine, but I tell everybody I know about it because it's so great. So to give the backdrop, it's probably 10,000 years old. So the principle is in Hindu scriptures, and Shiva gave it to Parvati. So it's in the book. It gives the scriptural reference, right? So it's ancient, and Swamiji. So the short name is Paramahamsa Nityananda, which means eternal bliss. So when I got completely stuck yet again 8 years ago, so I was meditating. To give the context, I was meditating. I learned mindfulness. Then later I learned Transcendental Meditation, which is also great because I do it every day. It's deeply restful. I get practically no jet lag. Reduces it. The health benefits are enormous, like heart, reducing the risk of heart disease, etc.
Explain really quick. I don't want to interrupt you, but for listeners who may be wondering, what is TM? How does it differ from normal meditation?
Yeah, so mindfulness is about being present, normally by putting your attention on your breath or your senses. And mindfulness also ultimately Hindus were doing mindfulness before the Buddha was born, right? They all come from the same place, right? So Transcendental Meditation, some listeners will know, was brought to the West by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who taught the Beatles. So when you see pictures of the Beatles all wearing flowers and there's a guy in a white outfit with a beard in the middle, that's Maharishi. So in the 60s, he brought Transcendental Meditation, and I find it much easier because you instead of putting your attention on your breath and then your attention keeps wandering, you put your attention on a mantra. You think a mantra, a sound, and then they call it going deep. You kind of drop into a fourth state of consciousness, which is not waking, sleeping, or dreaming. It's a fourth state. And it's deeply restful, and people, for example, David Lynch, the filmmaker, there are loads of very creative people who do it. You're kind of tapping into the cosmos, really. Anyway, so I was doing TM, but one thing I noticed, and this is like the beginning of the power of letting go, is I noticed, as a headhunter, recruiting really senior people and writing books and meditating, I noticed everybody's stuck in at least one of four areas. So if you look at every human being, and you look at health, wealth, relationships, money, everybody is stuck in at least one of those areas, right? There's so many billionaires who get cancer, they get divorced, their children die young. And then when I was hanging out with meditators, a load of them are broke. So they're blissfully
yes, you can be wealthy and be spiritually sound. Yes, this is a misnomer.
Some have a belief that it's impossible, but objective, if you stand back, everybody keeps running into blocks in at least one of those areas, right?
Okay. And how does wealth differ, just so I know, from money?
Oh, sorry, did I say it right? So, sorry, health, relationships, career.
Okay,
money,
yeah, perfect.
money. So some people, yeah, very wealthy and totally unfulfilled in their careers. That's
Mm-hmm.
also possible.
Of course, right.
So anyway, so I got, I realized I was stuck in the area of money and relationships, and I was meditating. I thought, well, how do I solve this? So I did the same thing. I let go. I asked to be guided, and I meditated. And then 2 or 3 days later, someone I'd met a couple of times sent me an email and a Facebook message and said, please come to this event. And so I went to this event, and the guru, who we call Swamiji, was on a very poor internet connection.
Mm-hmm.
But what he said made perfect sense, because from my previous spiritual background, he'd written this book called Living Enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized he was teaching us to live our whole lives the way that people. So most people who meditate, they meditate and then the whole day is difficult. And he was teaching us to live our whole lives that way.
So meaning live your whole life how? So having your day be difficult?
Well, no. So when people go very deep in mindfulness or Zen meditation or in transcendental meditation, there's an experience of pure consciousness where there are no thoughts, right? So you're conscious, but there are no thoughts, right? Some people have almost never experienced this, but normally I say to people, if you've been on top of a mountain or on top of a cliff and you see a beautiful scene, and maybe your mind shuts down for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But within a few seconds, it starts saying, well, this is a bit like that place where I was last year, or is it time to eat my sandwiches? Or
it starts to be a monkey again.
Yeah, the monkey kicks off again. But normally for a few seconds, there'll be this gap of pure consciousness. Right? And what I say to people is that gap, that's you. Because the thoughts come and go. The thoughts are not you. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that we are our thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you do meditation, you realize that's not true, because your thoughts can shut down.
Yes.
Anyway, so the reason I latched onto what Swamiji was saying was he was talking about living enlightenment, and I just realized that he was talking from exactly the same tradition as mindfulness and transcendental meditation, but he was going a lot further, and he was addressing. So I read half of his book, and then I went on a 3-week program in India. But I went to learn a very specific technique, which we're going to talk about now.
Yes.
And the technique, so the principle is very simple. As Freud and all these other people said, everybody has a traumatic experience before the age of 7.
Yes.
My experience of psychoanalysis is we didn't find a solution to that. When I came across Swamiji, I realized he did have a solution. And it's the opposite of what many of us have been taught in the West. So in the West, we've generally taught if something traumatic happens, you kind of push it aside and move on, right? Just focus on the positive, right?
Yes. Yes. That's called spiritual bypassing for anyone who's wondering.
Spiritual bypassing is a good word. I sometimes joke that if suppression was an Olympic sport, the England men's team would win medals, right? We're brilliant at it. And Swamiji calls it putting a carpet on a wound.
Yes. It's not effective, guys. If you practice it in your own life, it is not effective. But we're going to learn how it is. Yes.
I love the carpet metaphor because I can imagine this horrible infection.
Yes. It's gross. But anyway, keep going.
It's gross. So I'll give a personal example, right? So I was listening, and this is the interesting thing about real gurus, is you suddenly get flashes of insight in their presence. And the first time it happened to me, I hadn't even met him. I was on a phone call, conference call, and he was speaking. He was talking about wealth, which I was interested in. And I suddenly got this flash of insight, which was my first day at school. And my first day at school, this accent, you may know, this is This is the accent which the BBC sells to foreigners.
Yes,
right?
yes.
This is English, right?
Traditional.
Yeah, and normally easy to understand. And when I was a child, everybody on the BBC spoke that way.
Yes, yes.
These days, we have all kinds of regional accents, right? But in those days, everybody spoke like this, or a bit posh. And when when I was 4, we moved to Leicester, which is only about an hour and a half north of London, but they have a different accent. So instead of saying grass, they say grass. Instead of saying much, they say much. So it's a slightly different accent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so I arrive aged 5. It's my first day in the outside world as an independent person, and I start talking like this, and the other children laugh at me, and they say, "You're a bloody nutter," as in you're a nutcase, you're crazy, and I feel unacceptable. Right?
Yeah.
So this is what Swamiji calls a root pattern. So if you imagine all your pain, it's like a tree, but it has a root.
Yeah.
And in my case, to give this example, the root is my first day at school. And the two other things happened. I reckon it all happened within 2 minutes. My father was a sales manager, and he taught me to be very polite. And so I'm pretty sure I tried to shake hands with some of the other 5-year-olds, right? Which they immediately rejected.
I thought you were more of a nutter.
Yeah, like he really was a nutter. And they laughed at me. So this is the important part. At the age of 5, I concluded, I'm unacceptable, I'm not enough, and other people don't support me.
Limiting beliefs. Yes, they get rooted here.
Somebody calls it cognitions. You can almost see it like it's a piece of software which is now running your system.
It is in the background for a long, long time.
Decades.
So we could even argue, for the purpose of this, that many of us are running around with this programming as adults.
Practically everybody.
And it comes from, so our 5-year-old selves, in this case, if not undone, could be running the show. So we could be 45 with 5-year-old programming, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Swamiji says if you look at wars, so nations have root patterns. So you get a whole bunch of people with a similar root pattern, like the world doesn't respect us, or we're victims. And then, so you have a clash. 2 countries go to war, and it's basically 2 conflicting root patterns.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to put a pin in that because we do have to go to break, but this is riveting. Yes, it's time out. So everybody hang on. We'll be right back when talking with John Purkiss, the best-selling author of The Power of Letting Go, and discussing these root patterns of pain, which are driving our behavior even as adults. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes to pick up where we left off. Thanks, everyone.
All right, terrific. We're all clear. Back in a couple.
Thanks. John, any questions for me?
No, it's fine. I was just keeping an eye on the clock.
Don't worry about the clock. I got the clock.
Okay, good.
So I don't want you to have to worry about that. But I'm going to ask you some questions. I am recording just on my phone for fun, but I'm going to ask you some of halftime questions I ask everyone. How about that? It has nothing to do with pain patterns.
Fine.
Okay, so the first one is, if you could choose any superpower, what would it be and why?
This may sound trivial, but I've been initiated to do it. I haven't done it yet. I would like to be able to read with a blindfold on. I've seen many people do it. I haven't done it yet.
That's incredible.
I've seen mainly children do it, but adults can do it. Yeah.
That's so incredible. Is it called something?
I think we call it blindfold reading. Well, you're reading through your
probably
third
some
eye.
fancy British word for it that I don't know.
There'll be a Sanskrit word. No, you're reading through your third eye, basically. So you don't need to visualize. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Most people say flying, so that's a new one. Okay, the next one is, if you had an all expenses paid trip to somewhere new in the world that you've never been to, where would you go?
I'd go wherever Swamiji is, and we don't know where he left India 4 years ago to avoid being murdered, and we don't know where he is. So I would go wherever he is.
Does he pop up? Like, does he announce that he's somewhere sick?
He's online a lot. It's just after the nth assassination attempt, he just went somewhere safe. I think he will reappear, but right now we don't know where he is.
That's so interesting. Well, I know that you speak 4 languages, which is amazing. Is there a 5th that you'd like to pursue?
A 5th language? Oh.
Some language you don't speak that you'd like to
speak.
speak.
Well, this maybe not very so I can actually speak 4. I mean, they're connected, which means it's not, French, German and Spanish and English are all connected. Yep. I also spent 2 years learning Russian, and I've never been there. So if the fighting would stop, I would, I can read the alphabet. But I don't know if you know, the alphabet's easy once you've learned it. But I would like to learn Russian properly at some point. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, let's hope the fighting stops and you can go.
Be good. Yeah.
There's my fun questions. We're done with those.
Coming back here in just a few seconds.
Okay.
You are listening to Habits for Happiness. To reach the show today, call into 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Now, back to our program, and here again is Lady Fuller.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Habits for Happiness. We are talking with the best-selling author of The Power of Letting Go, John Purkiss, who's amazing. And before the break, John was talking about this idea of the root cause of our pain and our pain roots extending beyond ourselves into cultures, also into countries, as being a basis for war. So, John, that was so riveting. Can you pick up where we left off? Because I know that everyone listening would like to know more.
Yeah, so there's a webinar which was recorded 7 years ago called the Karma webinar, K-A-R-M-A.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so what Swamiji says is, you've all got these, he says karma is the pattern in which you are stuck. Right? So, as we were
karma is the pattern in which you are stuck. I just want to repeat that because it's so amazing. Okay.
Yeah, so karma is the pattern in which you're stuck. And essentially everybody is stuck in some way. I mean, billionaires are stuck.
Mm-hmm. We don't get free of our stuckness.
No.
It's part of the human condition.
Well, you can get free of it, but it won't happen automatically, right?
No, we're going to talk about that through this technique.
That's what we're talking about. So the big picture is that you complete with your own root pattern, right? And you liberate yourself from all these patterns. If you do it intensely, ultimately you become enlightened. Along the way, it enables you to manifest what you want in life.
Yes.
Because these patterns are preventing you from manifesting what you want.
Yes, they are.
Swamiji calls it self-doubt, self-hatred, self-denial.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, as I call it, the exhausted, depleted, resentful self-sabotage cycle. They're all similar.
Exactly. So take my example as a simple one. So self-doubt is I'm unacceptable. People don't like my accent, Self-hatred is I'm not enough. I reach out to these people, I shake hands. They don't want to connect with me. I'm speaking as an adult, obviously.
Nothing works, right? Nothing I do works.
And then the third one is self-denial, which is other people, other people don't support me. And then then those are like 3. And then it starts to grow, right? And then you get other patterns like one of mine, which hopefully is gone now, self-denial, which is life doesn't give me what I want. Right, quite a lot of people. So people have all kinds of patterns. I'm not lovable. Life doesn't give me what I want. I'm acceptable. There's a massive list of these patterns, right?
And they keep us as a victim, right? They keep us as a victim to circumstance.
Yeah. Well, one of the clues is that they make us powerless, and they keep us as victims, right? And this may shock some people, well, particularly if you've had a Christian upbringing. The first time I went to see Swamiji, he said to all of us, he said, I'm not here to convince you that I'm God. I'm here to convince you that you are God. So the message of this the message of the tradition is you are divine, and you're running around with all these pain patterns, you know, and this is me speaking, you're running around with all these pain patterns creating nonsense.
Totally.
So can we please get rid of the pain patterns?
Drop the pain patterns? Okay, John, you have to tell us how, because now everyone's on the edge of their seat like I am.
Right. The principle is incredibly simple, and most people don't do it right, including me for a while. So the principle is, it's called relive to relieve. So all you do is you write down. Actually, why don't we take an example, a practice example? Oh, okay, we could do it with you. So think of something that you would really like to manifest.
Okay.
Which you haven't manifested yet.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to tell me what it is, or is it?
You know, I'm working on manifesting money in my career.
Money, fine. Okay,
money,
perfect.
yeah.
Lots of people want money, good. So the second thing is, and what we normally do is ask people to write down, just listen very carefully, to just turn your attention inwards, listen very carefully, and your mind will start telling you all the reasons why it can't happen.
Yeah, I've already been through this, so I know, but I can tell you what's coming up for me right this minute.
Okay, so why can't this is what you really want to happen? Why can't?
Because I'm not worth it.
Right, you're not worth it. Okay, that's the opposite of what the adverts tell you, right? There's an advert that tells you you're worth it.
Yeah, no, totally. But I think down deep, I have like this belief, like from when I was very little, that like maybe it's not worth it, but I think it's something like I don't deserve it.
Right. Okay. Sure. Which one do you want to go with? I don't deserve it.
Let's go. I don't deserve it.
Okay. I don't deserve it. Right. So I hope everyone listening is following this. So step one was, what do I really want? I want money. Step two is, I don't deserve it. Right. So step three is look inwards and go back as early as you can to when you first felt that you didn't deserve. And it's not necessarily money. It could be, I didn't deserve an ice cream. I didn't deserve love. When was the first time you felt you didn't deserve something?
Yeah, so my mom died by suicide when I was 9. So pretty soon after that, my dad was remarried, and I picked up the idea that I didn't deserve anything. And that included money, but it was also love, and it was also anything material. I had those things, but there was this belief that like I didn't matter enough to have what everyone else had, including having a mother. Okay.
All right. So I don't deserve, the earliest one you found is 9.
9, yes.
There's probably an earlier one.
There's probably an earlier one. I mean, I think
we can start with 9.
Yeah,
9 is fine.
9 like makes the most sense to me, but I think if I did a timeline search, it would probably be much earlier. Yeah.
So let's go with 9. And then, so then the question is, what's the conclusion? So something happened and you concluded that I don't deserve, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my mother died by suicide and she left me, and I was her only daughter, right? She had a son too, but I felt like all of a sudden I was different from everyone else, and that abundance was not something I was going to experience in this lifetime at all. And that included love, and that included money, and that included pretty much everything.
Okay. So this is a really important part, is you were 9 and you came to a conclusion.
Yes.
Right. Just as I was 5 and I came to a conclusion.
Yes.
Like I concluded I'm unacceptable. You concluded I don't deserve. Right.
Yes. Yes.
This is the really important part, is you and I came to that conclusion. It wasn't somebody else.
No, I came to that conclusion. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I concluded it because I felt like if my mom left, I didn't deserve to have a life like everyone else was seemingly having. Like everyone seemed like they were having all the things and I was not having them. So it must be me.
Right. Right. Okay. So we concluded, and the really good news is we can change that. So we came to that conclusion.
Yes.
Which means we can also remove that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the role of the guru is to help us do that. But,
right.
But you know, we have what we need to do that, right? So this is the principle. The technique is incredibly simple. And I'm not going to ask you to do this now, because some people will just cry.
Yes.
It's best to do this on your own.
I've done a lot of this work, but yes, we won't do it now. It's in interest of time.
I'm not going to be crying during a podcast.
Yes.
So what you do is you don't, the important thing is you don't remember or rationalize or analyze, you relive. So you go back, make a warm drink, sit on your own, close your eyes, go back to the age of 9 and intensely relive the incident when you came to that conclusion. So I do this every day. It's like taking a shower. I clean out my inner space every day, right?
Wow.
Just as you would clean your hair, or,
Yeah, this is amazing.
Right? So often, normally I do, well, this morning I did some yoga, then I just sat down and I did this. Oh, well, actually, no, I did meditation first. What's interesting is if you meditate first frequently, you may have noticed this, a lot of the rubbish comes up during meditation.
Yes. It's like getting a spiritual facial, as I say.
Yeah, so all this stuff comes up. Now I need to know, now I know what I need to do during completions, right? So I sit, I'm describing it. I'll describe mine and then you can do yours, right?
Okay.
In the show, but you can do it. So what I do is, coming back to my example, okay, so I'm 5 years old, the sun is shining, I'm with my mum, I say goodbye to my mum, I arrive at this school, there are lots of big children running around, I go in the classroom, I start talking, the other children laugh at me, I try to make friends, but they laugh at the way I speak, and I conclude that I'm unacceptable. And what I do is I just relive that like I'm the protagonist, the main character in a movie. And I relive it as a 5-year-old, right? Not as an adult. And I just allow myself to feel any emotion. And it can be laughter, it can be crying. I've never seen it, but some people vomit.
Yeah, just purging.
You just allow it all to come out. I mean, this may sound, it's like squeezing pus out of a wound, basically.
Yes.
You just allow yourself to do it. And so that's what you just do it intensely, right? And if you keep doing it over and over again, you can do it in several sessions. What happens is it gradually diminishes.
Yeah. Take out the emotional charge.
Yeah. And so my experience is, I can still remember being suicidal. I can still remember my first day at school, but they've lost the emotional charge. I mean, the analogy I use, it's become like a book in a library.
Yeah, it's a story.
I can go and fetch it, but it's not running my life. Now, there are a couple of things here which some Westerners find difficult because, well, I think actually a lot of Westerners understandably associate religion with violence.
This is another podcast, but I'm in agreement here.
At the core, so Swamiji is, a very senior Hindu monk, right?
Right, yeah.
Who run the apex of a very large organization. But at the core of Hinduism is non-violence, okay? So, they're vegetarian, they don't hurt anybody, and you don't do anything through violence, mental or physical, right? So if you can at least accept, once we latch onto the idea that Swamiji and this whole ecosystem is non-violent,
right,
and not going to hurt anybody, right? And it takes people a while to accept that. But once you accept that, what we do is we can relive, for example, at the age of 9. But if you can't find it, it might be that you relive this episode at 9 and an earlier one just comes up automatically. That's fine, right?
Yeah. But
some people just get stuck. And what we do, we just ask, like, Swamiji, please show me. And then I'm walking down the street and it just comes up in a flash.
Yes, it happens.
And the same, by the way, just as an aside, there are 430 Shaktis or yogic powers, like healing, body scanning, blindfold reading, all these things. And a lot of them involve just asking Swamiji to show, and then it just appears, right? And so that's the role of, it's called an avatar, someone who comes down to help humanity. So the role of the avatar, like Swamiji, is to help us to become enlightened. And that includes showing you the pain patterns that you can't find.
Yeah.
Like the one, in my case, I didn't know when my pain pattern started, and suddenly it came in a flash on a phone call.
Yeah.
That's the avatar.
And our pain patterns, just for listeners, are what take our power away in the present, right?
Yeah, they make us completely powerless. And this is the really important thing, which is one reason why I tell everybody about this, is most people are unconscious. So they're running around. Swamiji is very direct. He calls it delusion. right? You're running around living your life from your root pattern. So most people,
Yes,
in business, for example, the number of business people who are reacting to something that happened in their childhood and they're 50 or 60,
yes,
still
yes.
driven.
I work with executives, and we talk about triggers a lot, and we work on doing some belief unpacking and timeline searches to find these wounds, right? These pain patterns.
Yeah.
And I always say, like at most everyone in the workplace, including you, not you, John, but you, this hypothetical person, is walking around with a pain pattern that's usually predates, let's say, 10 years old.
Yes.
And so you have a bunch of adult children driving and parenting and running companies, and
Causing
if we can, and it's insane. And if you think about it in that way, and the way people react quite negatively when they're triggered is, they find that old pain pattern comes up, and then they're reacting from that old pain pattern, which doesn't necessarily fit the present day crime, right? So you get these sort of like out of whack reactions, and then people feel all this shame because they're not totally sure. So if we can clear up that old stuff, we then, in my version of enlightenment, is we become, mature spiritual adults.
Yes.
And as we become mature spiritual adults, we then can function from our adult self. And so if we can learn how to function from our adult self, then we have more agency over all of these things. And then you talk about this idea in your work about being able to then access sort of our intuition, and therefore access our reaction to others. So I'd love to hear how you talked about how our relationships can improve so much when we don't buy into other people's pain patterns.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the word agency is very important. And I think in the current culture, because I go to the US every now and then, there's this whole thing about identity, identity politics. And frankly, I think it's very dangerous, because in the Eastern traditions, identity is another word for ego, right? Yeah. Because if you identify 100% with your ethnicity, with your education, with your language, all that stuff, you're setting yourself up for conflict with other people, right? So, I mean, if you put my friends in a room, they look like the United Nations, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's a celebration of diversity. It's not, because we all come in different shapes, sizes, and colors and abilities, and everything, but it's not. So that's like a celebration, as opposed to, well, I'm this color and this nationality and this language and this religion. And if you get attached to all of that, it's just going to create massive problems. I mean, one of my favorite examples, I used to think the London Underground, the Tube, was good, right? But I think Facebook is brilliant, because you can just see people being triggered all day long by what
Yeah, if you want to see adult children operating in modern day society, look at your Facebook feed.
It's just amazing. It's amazing. So I studied economics, and someone made some pronouncement the other day, and I just wrote a comment. And he'd read one book about economics by some very left. I just wrote a comment, just putting another point of view. And his final comment was, "Just read the book, dude. Don't waste my time." I thought it was hilarious. Well, fortunately, he's in Dubai, suitable distance away. But but people swear at each other and they insult each other and they do all this stuff. But it's all based on triggers, right?
Of course. So let's say that we do this completion work, and we've dropped pain patterns. They become stories in a book on our shelves, right? So tell us then how that shapes us in our ability to not react to other people's pain patterns, because this is so how does one have someone yell at them and be triggered and then not respond? Because we do live in a mirroring universe, so it is difficult to not be triggered back.
In a what universe?
I'm saying I believe we live in a mirroring universe.
Yes.
So it's very difficult. It's definitely true. And you talk about this in your book, that when we start to show up differently, everyone in our lives begins to show up differently, which is a beautiful gift, right? By our ability to let go of our pain patterns, we actually heal others.
Yes.
Which definitely is this amazing butterfly effect. So tell us about that, not buying into other people's pain patterns, therefore having agency over our ability to respond and not react. Yeah,
the way I see it is it starts earlier than that. So, and it's actually very positive. So Swamiji says everything is auspicious, like everything is good for you, right? So
yes,
imagine you're going along and someone does something that really winds you up, really triggers you, right?
Been there.
Right? So this is a blessing, because this person, I'm sure you're familiar with the shadow, right?
Mhm.
This person is a reflection of you. They are showing you your pain pattern.
There are teachers.
Yeah, well, what they're doing is they do something which triggers you. This is telling you what you need to complete, right? So, for example, I'll give an example. Well, maybe you give an example. Think of something that annoys you.
Yeah, so I don't love it when people drive slow, and I definitely drive too fast.
Okay, so when people drive slowly, how, okay, so that triggers you. How do you feel?
I feel frustrated,
Okay,
and I feel very, very impatient, which is sort of like this energetic.
okay, frustrated and impatient. Okay, so that's
Yes.
clearly, they're driving. They don't even know you. They're driving a car, but they've managed to trigger something in you. Fine.
Yes,
So,
yes.
So if you go back, look back over your life. When is the first time you felt frustrated or impatient?
About anything?
Yeah, anything. It doesn't have to be anything at all.
I felt very frustrated when I was young, because my parents were often fighting and then like leaving the house, and I couldn't control any of it. And I was very frustrated because I wanted to have peace.
Okay, so I'm paraphrasing, but you were powerless, right?
Yes, yes.
Which is a classic symptom of incompletion, right? So,
Yes.
but how old were you?
About 6 or 7.
Oh, okay, we're working our way back. Good.
Yes.
So you're 6 or 7. Okay, so same thing. So what you do is you make a warm drink, sit down. But the warm drink isn't essential. That's just
Yes, yeah. I love a warm drink, but that's
it's not a magic potion. You just sit there, you close your eyes, and you intensely relive being 6 or 7, this incident, and relive feeling frustrated, impatient.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the point is, you do that really, really intensely, and your mind will find 100 reasons for you not to do it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you sit and you do it intensely over and over and over again. And what will typically happen is people like that slow driver will show up less and less in your life. You'll basically stop creating that situation.
Yeah. This lesson.
So the underlying principle is that you create everything in your life. You are responsible. So if you're creating slow drivers who are triggering your frustration, it's up to you to complete that frustration pattern. And then what will happen is, what my experience is, people either change or they go away and they're replaced by new people.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've learned that lesson.
You've learned that
ourselves.
lesson. And if you want to imagine, if you imagine enlightenment is going up 100 floors in a building, you kind of go up a floor and then you find yourself surrounded by different people.
And probably a new pattern that I need to break.
But the point is, it's all good.
No, it's all good. This is, we want to raise our, what I would call vibration by keep going up floors, right? We want to change our frequency. So we start operating at a really high frequency and then attract other people that are on our frequency, that are on our floor.
And what
So
completion
John,
does,
go ahead.
What completion does is it moves you up. And if you do it intensely, you can move up relatively quickly.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to do that right after this podcast. This is amazing. So John, please tell viewers how they can find more of you. How can they find your books? How can they find your services? Give us the whole spiel.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't do coaching. I point everybody towards Swamiji because he's reviving the whole tradition. Actually, it's quite funny. A while ago, he announced, he was sitting on his golden throne, which isn't expensive, it's just golden. And he said, I bless you to be my ambassador to the intellectual world.
Wonderful.
I thought, great. Well, I'm already doing it, so I just do it more. Yeah, so in terms of finding me, I have a website, which is johnpurkiss.com. So it's JOHNPURKISS.com. The books are on there. They're also on Amazon. Actually, as far as I can tell, most of the sales of The Power of Letting Go are in the US.
Oh, wow.
And 40% are on Audible. So it's partly thanks to you doing podcasts.
Might not only be me, but thank you so much for saying that. So, and tell us about your current, do you speak? Do you?
I haven't done, well, the pandemic killed off the speaking. I mean, recently I've been doing quite a lot of podcasts, which I really like.
Yeah, great.
If anyone wants to do a podcast, I like podcasts. So yeah, and so I recruit senior executives. Oh, and I've just with a colleague, we've started a new business called Enlightened Ventures. So Swamiji
Yes,
said,
yes.
you should start enlightenment-centric businesses. So we decided we would start a business called it's enlightened.ventures. That's the URL.
Awesome.
And we raise money for high growth companies, which are doing very good things for the world.
This is amazing. Enlightened Ventures. And if someone wants to find that, is there a website? Enlightened Ventures?
The website is enlightened.ventures.
Oh, well, that's easy.
That's it. And it's also on my, it's on johnpurkiss.com. So.
Okay, amazing. So everyone check out johnpurkiss.com, Purkiss, and look for The Power of Letting Go on Amazon. It's an amazing book, or download it on Audible. It's a wonderful listen. And I appreciate everyone being here today. And John, thank you for the riveting conversation. This has been, I could have talked to you for hours and hours and hours, just skimming the surface. But I appreciate you and everything you shared with us and the listeners today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I wish everyone lots of success in completing.
Yes, try completion, everyone. The completion technique. You can find more about it in chapter 3 of The Power of Letting Go, John's work. And everybody, please join me next week for another riveting conversation about a habit that can help you with your overall happiness. Thanks so much, everyone, and take care.
All right, excellent job today.
Thanks. We're done, John. Thank you so much for bringing all your love and attention and energy today.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So,
any questions before we go?
Are you going to share any links? Or
I will. I'm going to email you an Apple podcast link, a Voice America link, and I'll send you this video that I was also recording just for your personal use.
Some podcast, is the word a podcaster? I don't know. Some podcast people, they share other information, because I've got a video I can share, something like that.
Yeah, I can put it in the show notes. So if you email me the video. The last time you emailed me a video, I believe it was yesterday, it didn't come through. So if you could just send me whatever link that is.
I will. I've got your email.
And I'll add it to the show notes, which I'll share with you as well.
Videos, yeah. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, John, it's been a riveting hour and so amazing. And I can't wait to practice completion. Your work is unbelievable and the world needs more of you. So It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye-bye.